right, we are back with Dr. Chappell because apparently everyone in the world has questions for him. As a reminder, he is a gut health expert. He has his PhD in nutrition. He is a lecturer at Queen Mary's College
Queen
or
Margaret
University.
University.
Margaret Mary.
That's a different Scottish queen.
Yeah, different Scottish
One of
queen.
them
You
lost
guys
her
have way
heads.
too many. Yeah, Queen Mary lost her head. Hopefully
That's right,
Margaret
yeah.
didn't. I
Her
don't
cousin
know.
chopped it off.
But thank you for being here. How are you doing today? And for the listeners, P.S., we have a time change in America. That doesn't happen in Scotland, so it was a little chaotic this morning. But thank you,
Yeah,
Dr.
we're on
Chappell,
a
for being
different
here.
time system, so we are. We get a change in our time later on. We go from GMT to BST at some point, but not yet. So you were a bit stressed, I think, but we've got here now. Thank you for having me back on the show. Obviously, your listeners enjoyed it, and I was obviously able to share some insights that they found useful, or I hope that they found useful. And I believe you've got some questions for me from the
I
audience, so I'm happy to take them away and just go for it. Yeah,
Yeah, I have so many questions. Like I had
sure.
said, I don't know if we're going to get through all of them. If we don't, then it might have to be a reoccurring Ask Dr. Chappelle. But,
That sounds cool, right? Who's the
right?
guy in America?
Yeah.
It's Dr. Phil, isn't it? Like he's your
Yeah.
ED doctor.
Yeah, he's the chief. Well, Dr. Phil and Dr. Oz.
Oh, I've seen Dr. Oz. I think I've got more hair than Dr. Phil. I'm not sure about Dr. Oz.
You do. You do have more hair than Dr. Phil. But okay, so this first question is actually from one of your fellow Scotsmen.
All right,
And
okay.
the question is, how do I maintain enthusiasm to exercise consistently instead of having periods of stopping and starting? Is it a question of willpower? How do I change my mental attitude to convince myself to choose exercise over something else?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. That's the sort of thing that if you could bottle it and get people to drink it and to do it, then you'd be a millionaire quite easily or a billionaire on this. I mean, we talked about this on
Mhm.
the last episode, I'm pretty sure. And this is really your field, that the sports psychology kind of element of it. But gosh, where to even begin? Um, Look, your motivation to do something, because that's what we're talking about here. It's enthusiasm, it's motivation. It's finite. It's only going to last for so long. And there's going to be complex brain chemistry which is going to influence that. So that is probably your things like your dopamine that we're talking about
Mhm.
beforehand, and so on, these anticipatory hormones and so on. However, what you really need is you need more enthusiasm and you need more than motivation. What you really need is discipline. And people, you'll have heard them talk about this lots and lots down the year, right? Discipline equals freedom. Discipline's the important thing that you have, right? And that really is all about habits. So it's you do the thing even though that you don't want to do it or you can't be bothered doing it, yeah? So that's the discipline sort of element. Now, you go at the brain chemistry, and you can correct me on this if I get it wrong, Paige, right? Because again, this is
Yeah.
your area more than mine's on this. But how your brain works, right, is it sends these little neural pathways and these neural patterns all the time, like a highway, yeah? And we call those things schema, yeah? So you've got these schema and these fault
Mhm.
patterns that are going all the time. A little bit like a Skeletrix track, if you remember those sort of things, or a train track, a model little train track. However, when we build new habits into our daily lives, and that can be going for a little walk, or I don't know, it's going to the gym, or it's trying to do a new food pattern, or it's maybe trying to quit smoking, for example, right?
Yeah.
Some of these schema can be really embedded, yeah, in our sort of processing pathways, right? And what we're doing when we're building these new habits is we're opening up new highways and new branches in our brain, new connections and new directions
Yep.
for us to go on, right? And in our body, what it likes to do is when it's going out into those new patterns and those little new highways, it likes to fall back into the
Mhm.
previous schema because it's so used to doing those patterns and it's easier for yourself to do those sort of patterns, right? So we're always at risk of falling back. Now, if you go out and you read the literature on this sort of stuff about habit building and habit forming, for example, then what you see is things like 18, 20, 24, 26 weeks, and so on. That is the amount of time that it takes to build these new thought patterns and these new processes and these new habits in time, yeah? And it can feel like you're really knocking your head against a wall, hating life, doing these things all of the time until you can get to a stage where that habit has been formed, right? And this sits inside a greater model that we call the behavior change model, which fits with
Mhm.
Krasinski and Clementi. Is that it? Yeah, I think it is. And what they sort of say is you've got this cycle of change where you get people who are we call pre-contemplators and not thinking about changing their habits. You get contemplators, people are thinking about changing their habits. You've got preparation, where people are making steps before they start changing their habit, maybe hiring a coach or something like that, or buying equipment for the gym or buying books on it. And then you've got the action phase where people are actually ongoing doing that new habit that they're following up on. Now, after that, the next step we have within it is the maintenance phase, and that is whereby we've got a fully embedded, brand new habit taking place there, right? We've acquired the discipline and we're changing our life, yeah? But at each step on this, you can fall off this cycle because you can have a relapse, and that's what's happening with our fellow Scotsman that's writing in about this, and you're falling back into your schema patterns, right? Now,
Mhm.
as nutritionists, as life coaches, motivational speakers, and things like that, what we're trying to do is, and I mentioned this in the previous one, we are trying to make sure that you've got an emotionally grounded goal which really matters to you and which you value so that if you do fall off the bandwagon, you can get back on it because you can see how this improves your life, why it makes things better for you, why it's got some intrinsic value. And we want to remove the barriers that's in your way so that it doesn't feel like you are knocking your head against the wall and that you're never going to be able to embed these habits. So that means trying to take out any barriers that might be in your way, such as, I don't know, if it's going for a walk, for example, maybe you don't have to always walk outside because you don't enjoy it when it's raining. Maybe you can do an
Yeah.
alternative like cycling on a bicycle in the house, or you do a workout in the house, or something like that. Or maybe cigarette smoking is a good example. Maybe you go from instead of smoking 20 cigarettes a day to moving on to a vape which has got X amount of nicotine in it, and then that comes down over time. So we're removing the unhealthy habit, or we're at least reducing it till we feel that you can get to a stage whereby you're not dependent on it, if you like. So to summarize a lot of this stuff, right? Because I realize I've just gone on this talk for the last 10 minutes. What we're looking to do is first, we need to find a goal that you really truly value, which matters to you. We need to design a program or a process or habits which are what we call SMART. So specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time based, something that you can actually do. We need to remove barriers which are in the way and then give you hopefully the emotional support so that you can overcome any obstacles that get in your way because this is going to happen. You are going to fall off the
Mhm.
horse at some point. It's largely inevitable, and then this will all coincide with that brain chemistry dump. But it takes time. It's hard, and you know what? Anything which is worth achieving, it's going to be hard. So there you go. Does that answer the question? Do you think, Mitch,
It
or
does.
what do you think? I'm
It
going to let you
does.
come in here. You were very patient, and I'm sure you've got lots.
Yeah, no, you're fine. I also want to, okay, you talked so much about the neural pathways, and it's all true, right?
Yeah,
Because when you are changing a habit, for people that don't know, you're changing your identity, right? Like you're changing your
that's
identity.
such
You're
a great
going
point.
from somebody who, let's just use health and fitness for an example, but this can apply to anything in your life, any change that you're making in your life. You're going from somebody who does not work out consistently, you're in that present identity, to someone who does work out consistently. And you know best more than anyone, you are very identity based in your health and fitness. Like if I'm thinking about somebody who works out every morning at 5 a.m., I don't know what time you work out, but I'm going to think of Dr. Andy Chappell. Like that's like part of your identity. You're somebody who works out consistently,
Yeah, yeah,
right? And your default mode network, the part of your brain where identity lives, is always, like you said, going to default to the familiar. And if you are not somebody who has worked out consistently, the familiar is going to be, I'm not going to go work out today. And so I think part of it too is always fighting for that new identity that you want to be in, even if it's small. Maybe it's not working out for an hour, maybe it's just showing up for 10 minutes, because a fight for that new identity is going to reinforce those neural pathways that you are someone who works out consistently, you are someone who is in shape, you are someone who does all these things that you want to achieve. That's my 2 cents. Also, we
I
both
love
know
that.
that thank you. We both know that dopamine plays a big part in this. And whenever you start a goal, that dopamine, which is your anticipatory chemical, is
Yeah,
firing. And then, like you said, the chemicals start to rebalance in your brain, and you have to plan for that dopamine dip. You have to plan for it. You have to know in 7 to 14 days that anticipatory chemical is going to dip, and you're going to have to push through it. That's it. You have to push through it. You have to know that in 14 days, this goal is not going to be as exciting as it
yeah,
was on the day or week or second week that I started, but it's just what I have to do. If I want to achieve a goal, I have to push through this, because there is nothing in life that, worth doing I don't really know how to say this, but anything that you want to do in life that's worth doing and achieving, you're going to have to get through the ebbs and flows of it. Like
yeah,
period.
yeah,
There's
100%.
my rant for the
No, no,
morning.
I don't think that's great. I think that's very, very valuable. I mean, it reminds me of a conversation I had with a prospective client the other day there. And I made almost more or less the same point to him as that when he said that like it's been really hard to do this and to get to where he's got to and stuff like that. And I said, well, was your expectation that it was going to be easy? Because it's not.
Right.
Like that because if you think this is going to be, then you're already setting the wrong expectations for yourself. I like Jordan Peterson. I think he's great, and I've got a little lobster here as like a little mascot, right? Just to him, right? He often talks about the death of the ego, and that idea
Mhm.
that you're talking about of coming and making a new identity for yourself. Because it's not only is it as a new lifestyle, it's a new identity. And that
Yeah.
identity, again, I'm not quite sure. It probably sits somewhere within the hippocampus related to
Mhm.
status and where you are. You effectively are killing that former version of yourself and
Bingo.
replacing it with a new one. And that's massive. Yeah. And when you're
Mhm.
14 days in, as you say, and you're losing the motivation, that's where all these little life coaching techniques that people will have will do with you. Like, did you make your vision board? Have you done a self audit? Are you reminding yourself
Mhm.
why you're actually doing this sort of stuff on here? Have you done the cost benefit analysis of weighing up how much is this costing me to stay the same versus
Right.
changing? Like that cost benefit style analysis. What are you really stressing about that's stopping you getting away? Are you focusing on things that you can't control Let's just focus on the things that we can control. And are you thinking about the outcome at the end? How is your life better in a year's time over here, having done all this stuff? Like that's the potential reward, I guess, off the back of it. Another thing that I think is interesting, right, is research into psychedelics, right? I think is really cool, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that we know from people who suffer from depression is that there's a lack of neurotransmitters being fired within the brain. Hence why we often prescribe selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, right? So that we can
Yeah.
get the more serotonin getting passed through our neural pathways so that our schema are actually firing. And one of the things which just came out from that sort of psychedelic psilocybin LSD style research of people who have got
Mhm.
depression is that when they take these things, they no longer are working in the same old schema. It opens up new pathways for them, and it maybe allows you to fast track new behaviors much, much quicker than you otherwise would be. Now, I'm now moving into the realms of speculation beyond this
Yeah.
from there, but people always like sort of these ideas in Silicon Valley of microdosing and journaling and
Yeah.
personal development alongside that sort of so that they can think differently because that's what essentially you're doing with behavior change. You're trying to think differently with these different patterns and so on. But that's an interesting aside, and I will do research into cordyceps and lion's mane and mushrooms. I think in the future for this
Oh,
sort of stuff.
please do because I have
Cool, right?
some questions about that stuff.
Oh, I'm no expert, but that's me. So we'll talk about that. It's cool stuff though. It's very very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you know that like Colorado here, they've legalized um mushrooms
Have
essentially.
they? Oh, wow, that's
Yeah,
cool.
dude. Like you can grow your own mushrooms and they've legalized it and I think it's what psychobilins. I don't know the
Psilocybin. Psilocybin.
okay. But they have a lot of clinics now for that and clinics to help treat anxiety, depression, etc.
Hmm.
But
Fascinating
I
stuff.
know yeah, it is. Um but uh, anyway. So, okay, another question.
Go for it.
Is it is it better to do cardio before or after weights?
Okay, this is a good question. This is a good question. I wrote a lay article on this once, having reviewed the literature. So here's the problem, right? With this sort of scenario on it on here. So this style of training is what we call concurrent exercise training, right? So you do your weight
Okay.
session and then you do your cardio session, or you do your cardio session and then do your weight session on here, right? Now, when you exercise to build muscle, right, within the muscle itself, there are cells, so there are signals sent into the cell which go through various canonical signaling pathways to something called mTOR, which is the master regulator for telling your body to make new protein tissue, right? That's what happens when
Mhm.
you lift weights. If the stimulus is great enough, right? And then that tells your body to lay down new actin and myosin, thick, heavy filament, yeah? So the muscles get larger as a consequence of it. When you do cardiovascular type exercise, the downstream signaling pathways which occur within the cell are different. One of the things that they tell your body to do is to generate new mitochondria within the cell. And a
Mhm.
mitochondria is it's like a factory, right? And that
Yeah.
factory is responsible for processing oxygen and it makes your body better at processing the oxygen and utilizing that oxygen. And you know from aerobics that if you can take in more oxygen and tell your cells within your muscles to utilize more oxygen, then you can continue to generate energy and not fatigue at the same sort of rate. And then there's other things which occur within the cells as well at the same time, right? Now, it used to be thought that there was some sort of interference type effect. E.g., if I do my weight session, I signal to myself to tell it to make more protein. If I do my cardio session, I signal to myself to make more mitochondria. And whatever I do first, the thing that I do second, the signals in the cell will cancel out that effect. So I'll not get any benefits from doing the muscle building. Or the other way, which is I do my cardiovascular exercise first. I go for my big long run, and then I do my weight session. But by doing my weight session, the downstream signaling will cancel out the mitochondrial biogenesis, and then I'll only get the effects of the weight session, right? That used to be the thought process going on there. It turns out there is no interference effect whatsoever, right? So that you
Okay.
can do them both and reap the benefits of them both. Now, the problem is though, that if you want to get very, very good cardiovascular fitness wise, like have a very high VO2 max record, which is your ability to process oxygen and transport that around the body. That's a measurement of fitness, right? And cross country runners, Tour de France cyclists, Olympic distance athletes, these have got the highest VO2 maxes in the world, these particular athletes. So if you want to be that fit, then you've got to do a hell of a lot of cardio. Lots and lots and lots of endurance running, right? Or cycling or whatever it is. The problem is it doesn't leave much time to lift weights, right? Because you're doing all this cardiovascular training, but at the same time, you're exhausted, you're tired. So you maybe don't want to even go and lift the weights as well. Also, in most endurance sports, there's this concept, right? And it's very familiar saying, light is fast, right? If you're carrying bulk, it tends to slow you down. Okay, so that's one side of it. On the far side of it, if you want to be an Olympic weightlifter, a very high level, a power lifter, a strong man, something like that, and be very explosive, strong, and powerful, you're doing a lot of what we call anaerobic work. You're lifting a lot of weights, and you're putting all your eggs in that basket, right? But it doesn't leave a lot of time to get aerobically fit. And now, with both situations, doing a lot of aerobics, you do get a little bit stronger. Doing a lot of strength training, it's not like you don't get aerobic adaptations as well at the same time. But it doesn't pay to be doing so much aerobics when you only need a certain baseline level of fitness, maybe to be a sprinter. You don't need to be able to cover 1,000 meter on there, unless you're doing multiple disciplines on here. So at the extremes, the sports select out for people that do just purely one type of sport over there. In the middle, where you've got what we call stop-start sports. So I'm trying to think of examples from the US that I can kind of give you for you guys, like basketball, stop-start, rugby, soccer. These are stop-start. So you sprint for a little bit, you jog. You sprint for a little bit, you jog. You have high impact, you do explosive things. These people are kind of a mix of both. And like something like CrossFit's a mix of them both as well. So you can get strong, but you'll never be quite as strong as the guys that are purely trying to be strong. You can get super fit in terms of your aerobics, but you're just never going to be as aerobically good as someone that's purely dedicated to doing that thing, right? So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about concurrent exercise training. To answer your question of what to do first, right? Because you probably thought this is an easy one, we'll just knock that one out. If you do your aerobics first, then it warms you up for your weight training, right? So you're less likely to get injured. If you do your aerobics second, then it'll cool you down from your resistance training, so you'll be less stiff and sore after it. It depends how intense that aerobic training is, because if it's too intense, then it'll fatigue you for your resistance training. And then if your resistance training is too intense, it'll fatigue you for your aerobic. So it really comes down to what it is that you're trying to achieve, what your main priority is, your focus is, what your goal is. And there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer. There's only trade-offs, if you see what I mean, right? So I believe there's typically no answer.
That's fine.
Does it all make sense?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with just like so many people, unless you were like a full-blown athlete, they don't know how to work out.
Yeah.
Like they don't, and I think that's the biggest thing. Here's another workout
Okay,
question,
go for it.
and this is from someone who is the person that asked this is fit, and
Okay.
she has ran multiple marathons,
Hmm.
but she's 42 now, and she's just trying to get more fit.
Yeah.
She wants to know what's better to build more muscle, heavy weight and low reps, or lighter weight and more reps?
Gosh, that's a great question. This is one of these classic debates
Yeah.
within the world of resistance training. Um, gosh, it's another great big question. If it's purely for hypertrophy, e.g., building muscle tissue, when it comes to building muscle, there's a number of different pathways which contribute to muscle building. So what we've got is we've got muscle building being facilitated through muscle damage, e.g., you damage the muscle tissue, so the muscle tissue has to grow bigger and stronger for the next occasion,
Mhm.
right? E.g., get bigger. Um, the next parameter we've got is metabolic stress being placed on a muscle as well. E.g., you utilize all of the creatine phosphates within a muscle, all of the lactic acid gets built up within a muscle. You utilize all the glucose within the muscle as well. That leads to more muscle size alongside oxidative stress, which is placed on the muscle as well at the same sort of time. So we've got muscle damage, we've got metabolic stress being placed on the muscle as well. You've got mechanical tension and motor fiber recruitment as well. So how it works is it works like this. When you go to lift a weight, what your body does is your body will recruit an appropriate number of motor units required to do the task, which is why when I pick up this pen, I don't just throw it out the window because I'm not trying to
Okay.
pick it up with maximal contraction within my body. Now, the number of motor units which get recruited increase with the magnitude of the work required for the task. So if I lift at 10% of my maximum lift, I recruit X amount of motor units, and then 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%, I will start to recruit more and more motor units until I recruit the maximum amount once I'm lifting at 100% of my maximum, right? So that's
Yeah.
the mechanical tension aspect of this. Now, this is why I'm now going to, why I explained this. If you do sets and repetitions which are light, which are heavyweight, so you do things which are, say, 3 reps, 5 reps, 6 reps. After the first, you're probably lifting somewhere in the region of about 85 to 95% of your repetition maximum on that. And as you do the repetitions, you'll get closer and closer to what we call volatile failure. So you might recruit 85% of the motor units when you lift that weight initially. The second rep, you're up to 87, 89, 90, and you've almost completed the rep. You're really, really straining, and all the motor units have been recruited within a muscle. Yeah. The same thing happens when you lift light weights. So when you lift something, say, at 70% of your 1 rep max, and you're working at, say, a rep range of around about 12 repetitions, 15 repetitions, okay, you might only work with 60% of the motor units recruited initially, but as the set continues and those motor units fatigue, you start to recruit more and more motor units thereafter that. And if you do things like advanced training techniques like drop sets and supersets and things like that, you will recruit again motor unit, more and more motor units from there. So you can get the equivalent recruitment from doing those lighter weights versus the heavier weights. And you can see where I'm going with this, right, Paige? Because I'm going to give you an
Yeah.
answer very similar to the first one. But doing the lighter weights, you might get more metabolic stress, you might get more metabolic damage, and you might get more muscle damage, but you don't get the same neurological pathways firing that you get from the heavier weights. You don't get the same strength adaptation. With the heavier weights, you get more strength adaptations on there. you recruit more muscle, more units, but then the risk of injury potentially goes up as well at the same sort of time. Now, the research on this kind of shows that if you take, say, repetitions between, say, 6 to 10 reps, or you take repetitions between around about 10 to 15 reps, what actually happens when you look at the meta-analyses of these, and that is a meta-analysis is when you accumulate all the studies together and you compare what the overall result is. So it's much more powerful
Mm-hmm.
than a single study. Then you see that actually they're probably about as good as each other when it comes to building the muscle tissue. The other rep range, though, which is what we're looking at, is maybe about, say, 15 repetitions up to 25 repetitions. That's not as good. Yeah. So you're probably better off working in that classical, what we call hypertrophy zone of, say, doing around between 8 to 15 reps to build that muscle tissue at a set
Okay.
pattern, which is probably somewhere between about 12 to 20 sets per week for that particular muscle group. But I would always encourage that you periodize your programs. So that means you do a program for, say, 6 weeks to 12 weeks. And then once you've exhausted that program, you move on to a new program just to keep it kind of interesting. So do both. Do the heavier stuff, get good at it. Do the lighter stuff as well. And again, it's what do you want to achieve? Do you want to get really, really strong? And remember, if you get really, really strong, that helps you lift those lighter
Mm-hmm.
weights for more repetitions as well. So it's all good. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank
Yeah.
you. So essentially, just both are, neither one is wrong. It just
Yeah.
depends on what goals you want to achieve.
Yeah. Now, for your friend who's a distance runner, she's
Mm-hmm.
probably a little bit heavier because
Yeah.
you net and maybe you minimize the amount of sets you do because she can get stronger. She maybe doesn't want the bulk, but I don't know what her goal is
Yeah.
because in remembering with the
Yeah.
endurance stuff, light is fast. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're carrying it
Yeah. And
says, yeah,
she's very thin. She just wants to build muscle. So,
yeah,
but
of
not
course.
bulk. But
Yeah.
okay. Next question. And we kind of spoke about this last time, and the answer is yes. But she wanted to dive a little deeper. Um, is your immune system affected by how good or poor your gut health is?
Yes. Yes. So
Okay.
the gastrointestinal tract serves multiple purposes within the body. So digestion and absorption of nutrients, but the
Mhm.
other thing which it is extremely important for is for the development of the immune system, okay? And the reason why or rather, just as an example of how important it is for that, if you take a mouse and you give it antibiotics, right, and you eradicate the gut microbes, and then you get that and you put it in a germ-free environment, so you sterilize it and you don't allow any bugs to get in there, and then you raise it, and then you get it to have kids, and then you get that mouse, and you give that antibiotics, you get that to have kids, and so on. And you keep on. You create what's called a autobiotic animal. That's a bubble animal which has never got any germs or anything like that ever introduced into the environment, right? And what you see happening is it never develops an immune system. It's got what you call a naive immune system, right? So we've got
Mhm.
lymphocytes, that's our white blood cells, and you've got, gosh, I don't know how many thousands of different types of B cells and T cells and granulocytes and macrophages and debit. You don't develop all these different types of cells and so on there, but also at the same time, your gastrointestinal tract doesn't develop properly. So you don't end up with a nice mucosal
Okay.
lining around your GI tract. Your villi, which are these little fingers which protrude, which allow you to capture nutrients, don't develop quite properly. You don't have what we call these tight junctions between cells to keep things together to stop the infiltration of microbes. And I've got a little bit of a cold at the moment. There's mucus in the back of my throat, right? Because it's being put in there to fight off an infection in there. You
Mhm.
don't develop stuff like that. Like you don't have snot, right? Because why would you need it,
Really?
right? Well, why do you need it?
True.
Yeah, right. So you don't. Yeah, I mean, you need something there to lubricate, but it's not the same, right? It's not the same because that's full of antimicrobial compounds, but it's also
Yeah.
sticky to stop bugs getting in there as well. It's like a barrier. It's like a physical barrier. So the gastrointestinal tract is super, super important for your immune system, right? And where it can go wrong, I mean, it can go wrong in several stages. And just another point, this is a point of contention for the gastrointestinal world or the microbe world is infants, neonates, right, in the womb, sterile environment, right?
Mhm.
They're born without a microbiota. As soon as they birth, vaginal birth, they are basically smeared in the vaginal microbiota, and then that's how they get their first microbes into their body, right? And there's this side from all of that, right? And then when they consume breast milk and they interact with their mother's skin, that's again opportunities for the baby, the newborn, to get microbes into their body as well
Mhm.
at the same sort of time. And then whatever the environment they are in allows them to again encounter microbes and get them into the body. So that's how their immune system really starts to develop. It's from these early stage interactions which are going on within the body. And if they've got the right combination and the right balance of microbes, then they potentially get a healthy gastrointestinal tract developing from there. So your immune system, one of the things in which it does is when you consume a food item or anything that comes into your body, your immune cells, you've got these specialist cells called dendrite cells, and they've got like big fingers. They look like your nervous system cells, essentially, these dendrites.
Mhm.
And they put their fingers into the GI tract and they just capture molecules on there. And then they take those molecules and they take them into your body's um, innate, or rather, yeah, innate immune system. And then they say to the innate immune system, we've got this stuff, what do you think of it? Right? And the immune system works on this kind of basic concept, right? You've got this idea of self and non-self, right? And if it encounters something which is non-self, e.g. not itself, it's got a decision to make, and it is this potentially harmful, or should we just sample it and it's fine, right? Because
Mhm.
and what's happening in various autoimmune reactions or and just an infection is your immune system detects something which it's not okay with, presents it to one of these antigen presenting cells within the body. That antigen presenting cell says, right, oh gosh, this is good, this is bad. And then you get a response off of the back of it from there. So many autoimmune conditions that we have are a consequence of a immune system which isn't primed properly to deal with molecules coming from an external environment that it should be able to cope with normally. Now, some of this is genetic. So something like celiac disease, for example, your body doesn't have the right genetics or the right genes to be able to cope with the gluten which is coming in, and it has an immune reaction thereafter that. But some people have suggested that there's these ideas of like, okay, well, there's things like the hygiene hypothesis. So if you imagine you
Mhm.
give birth, right, and you get
Yeah.
cesarean section, so already you're missing out on the interactions with gut microbes that you would have got from your mother immediately. You then breastfeed, you don't breastfeed, you get bottle fed. So already again, you're not getting the same microbes that you otherwise should be getting, or the same what we call prebiotics, which are in um, breast milk from here. If you are always in a super sanitized environment, rather than going out and playing and being around muck and things like that, this immune system doesn't develop properly, and your immune system never gets to interact with all these different bugs which are coming in to the body. So whenever it's facing a challenge, it just freaks the hell out, right? And
Mhm.
what we've seen infectious diseases come down because of vaccination programs, like so cholera, smallpox, tuberculosis. These things have all kind of gone down. But autoimmune conditions like colitis, Crohn's disease, asthma, um, atopic skin conditions, food allergies have all gone up. So people have made this link between the hygiene versus the lack of dirt, if you like, and the lack of priming for your
Yeah.
immune system. And then the other thing that you see as well is in these autoimmune conditions, you see what we call dysbiosis. So we've got a gut microbial profile, and everyone's gut microbial profiles a little bit different. But one of the common features of a gut profile, which is not healthy, because try to say what a healthy one is and what it's challenging because there might be
Mhm.
200 odd microbes within your gut, which can be in any different number of configuration as long as they're in there. It's okay. But there's a lack of richness. So instead of having, like, say, the 200 microbes you should have, maybe you only have 80 or 90, and the proportion of them are a little bit out of whack. And you see dysbiosis in disease. You see it in obesity. You see it in type 2 diabetes. You see it in autoimmune conditions. And again, it's all interlinked. And the problem is, right, is it that the gut microbial profile is off, which is causing the immune system problems? Or is it the immune system problems which is causing the gut microbial profile to be off? You see, is it that shit,
Yeah.
the egg kind of thing? Again, I'm always a believer in that it's the second order magnitude thing rather than it's a first order, but that's just my perspective on it. So does that answer the question? And do you have any
It
questions
it
to that?
it does, because I have a follow-up question for
Over it.
that.
Oh gosh.
We're not gonna get through all of these questions and
That's okay. You can
oh
maybe ask Andrew again. I think we've done
yeah,
four
1,000.
questions in about 40 minutes.
It's totally fine. This has been perfect. But here's a good follow-up. What
Go back.
foods should you actually never touch for your gut?
Should you
For like,
never touch?
yeah,
Gosh. Right.
feels
Okay.
like there's so much out there. I need a simple list.
A simple list for your gut. Okay. Well, as a nutritionist, one of the things that we always sort of espouse is this idea of variety. Yep. And one of the
Mhm.
reasons we do that is because we want to make sure that you get a nice complement of vitamins and minerals from a wide array of foods, because some foods are higher in vitamin C, some foods are higher in zinc and iron, other foods are low in B vitamins or calcium. So we've got to eat a wide variety of different foods to make sure we get all those things. The other thing we want to do is we want to eat a wide variety of different colorful foods as well, because there's polyphenolic compounds, things like anthocyanins, which give berries their purple colors, for
Mhm.
examples, or we've got things like phytoestrogens, which you find in soy, which have got properties as well. So we want to get a wide variety of different things, um, and variety is the spice of life, as we say. If we're looking at food items that, if I was to say, you shouldn't eat for your gut health, well, gosh, there's a whole range of products that I would describe as food-like items. Is it
Mhm.
really food, or is it just something which satiates you and fills a void in your life? So, and the type of foods I'm going to talk about are like ultra-processed foods, right? It's
Mhm.
just junk food, right? That stuff's not good for our health. Um, you can get away with certain ones, but the ones which are probably the worst for your gut health are, pains me to say this, cured meats are not great. So
No shit.
salami,
So like
beef
salami beef
jerky,
jerky?
pepperoni, like processed meats like sausage, and all that sort of stuff. And the reason why these things aren't good is because they contain heterocyclic amines, N-nitrosamine compounds, and those particular compounds seem to be carcinogenic. So they interact with what are called your colonocytes, which are the cells in your colon.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you're to put those compounds on a petri dish with some of those cells, over time it causes them to become carcinogenic, essentially, right? A
Yeah.
really high red meat diet, again, isn't great for the same sort of reasons.
Mhm.
And then the other thing is like burnt toast. So like see if you burn bread,
Uh-huh.
like what are these called again? Acrylamides. These things again interact with our endothelial lining, and they just seem to be really poor quality for us as well. I wonder, but here's the kicker with all this sort of stuff. It's it's like magnitude of effect,
Mhm.
because the question I don't think is set up in a great way. Um, because red meat, for example, is it if you it's maybe not so much the red meat, it's maybe that people that eat a lot of red meat have a lack of fiber. So they're not eating a lot
Right.
of fruits and vegetables. They're not eating a lot of whole grain breads, pasta, rice at the same time. Because how fiber works is, right, it's really, really sticky. And because it's
Mhm.
sticky, it binds up nutrients within it. It's one of its superpowers, if you like. And your body can't digest fiber, right? It just can't. It's not got the enzymes to do it. So what happens if it's bound stuff up, like all these nasty compounds that I was just describing, then they pass through your small intestine and then they get to the large intestine. And then the other thing that it does is it's just like a big brush. It helps you push through nutrients quicker, right? So we call it transit time, right? So if you get constipated, it's probably because you've got a low fiber diet, right? And if you're
Right.
constipated, what's happening is it's allowing more time for your body to interact with all these potentially damaging compounds. And look, it's not just that single one steak exposure, just like it's not that one cigarette that you smoke. It's
Mhm.
20 years of poor diet with eating a lot of these foods, interacting with the colon over time, and then eventually the cells just start, they can't cope with it any longer, right?
Yeah.
So red meat, maybe not so much, but certainly processed food items, not great. Sugar's an interesting one because we kind of lie to our nutrition students. We tell them that, look, nutrient absorption in the upper gastrointestinal tract, the small intestine is probably about 100%. You absorb everything, but maybe not. And if you put a whole whack of sugar in a huge amount, some of it might find its way through to the large intestine, and then that just becomes a buffet for bugs which live in there, and they're all competing all the time, right? They're always
Yeah.
doing that. And the ones which are most beneficial for our health, those ones ferment the fiber, and the ones which are maybe not so good for our health, they ones like to ferment the other stuff, like the sugars,
Mhm.
the red meat compounds, the iron, and all that sort of stuff, and transform it all, right? So I don't like this idea of these are foods that you should never eat, because
Mhm.
I'm also about like, well, what are you also missing out of your diet? But if you can stay away from the junk food, then it's going to be
Right.
better for your health, for sure. That I mean, everybody can probably relate to that from anecdotal experience, right? As well, and that they'll be a
Right.
bit like, right, I ate a whole bunch of crap food. I didn't feel great the next day. I was bloated. I didn't feel well. Compared to you go
One
on a period of a couple of weeks of eating quality foods, you everything just works, right?
Yeah. I want to say this. The Okay.
Go for it.
I don't understand. Have you noticed? like the people that I've spoken to in Scotland
Hmm.
are all about the carnivore diet now.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that?
Um,
It's like made its way over to Scotland. It was here in America for a while, like the carnivore diet. They're like, oh, just eat meats. And I'm like, Jesus, eat a vegetable too.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just the latest of many dietary trends. I mean, if I think about the
1000%.
carnivore diet, what we had when I first started doing my studies back in 2003, it was the Atkins diet, which is that high protein,
Mhm.
high fat, low carbohydrate diet.
Yep.
Just eating lots of steak and protein and processed meats and butter in your coffee was a thing, right? That was a really
Mhm.
popular thing, right? Anyway, that was the thing, and then that kind of evolved into paleo, which is like a sort of
Mhm.
version of the carnivore kind of diet, which is eat like a Paleolithic man. Not like Paleolithic men were eating grass-fed cattle, which are 300 pounds and high in protein, or eating nuts and grains and things like that that are being specifically cultivated and grown to have particular nutrient profiles. So it's nonsense, right? Paleolithic man ate whatever was available to him or her at the time in that area,
Uh-huh.
usually staving off starvation and dying around about 29 years old, right? So
Yeah.
you've got that, and then the next logical step is carnivore, which is again another iteration of paleo, really. I mean, that the other one that was
Mhm.
really popular was this sort of the organ diet, which was made popular by the Liver King,
Oh,
which is again
yeah.
mainly nonsense and actually potentially tetragenic if you're a female. So by that I mean potentially damaging for the fetus if you're to start consuming
Wow.
huge amounts of um organ. Oh yeah. I mean, your liver organs are amazing things to eat because things like your liver or your kidneys are amazing stores of things like vitamin A or vitamin D, for example, because that's just where your body stores up naturally, right? So if you imagine you eat an
Yeah.
animal which has got it's the same sort of thing. It's a mammal, right? It stores it in the
Right.
same sort of place. So if you want to get high concentrations of um, micronutrients, then organs are great places to go. The problem is though that if you're pregnant, then high dosages of things like vitamin A are again potentially damaging for the
Yeah.
fetus. You've got to watch out for that sort of stuff. As Gwyneth Paltrow, is that how you say her name? Gwyneth Paltrow?
Yeah.
Yeah, found out much to her I'm sure dismay when her company Goop was sued um with maybe in the US. I don't know if it happened in the US, but it still happened in the UK and in Europe because her products were potentially harmful to health because she was like mega dosing vitamins and marketing them at pregnant females. So yeah, so,
Yeah.
it's just the latest trend or thing on here, but the average Scottish diet is not that great. I can tell you that. I'm
Well, neither is
definitely
the
the
average
usual sort
American
of thing.
diet.
Very
So,
similar, very similar.
very similar.
We
Okay,
don't
I
think
know
like
we
mac
only
and
have
cheese
about
pretty much. You guys love mac and cheese.
we do love mac and cheese, okay?
I
And
like mac and
goldfish.
cheese.
You guys don't know what goldfish are. You guys have like
No,
the
no, no. What's a
cheesy
gold? What's this?
what?
What's a goldfish?
Oh,
I
the
know the one
goldfish.
that's got a little tank, but what's a goldfish?
They're like cheese crackers. So you guys have like the cheese crackers over there, but they're
Yeah.
cheese crackers that looks like a goldfish.
Okay.
It's
Well,
just
we like cheese. We make crackers with cheese. And what's the different types of cheese? I don't know. So a
mm.
cheese board's a very common thing in the UK. We love cheese boards.
So this one, so you have these crackers or whatever, but they're I don't know. They're like cheese crackers. They're like crisps.
Yeah. Yeah, I know
But
the thing we're talking
okay.
about, like mini cheddars. I know the thing.
Yeah, mini cheddars. That's exactly what it is over there.
Yeah,
Mini
yeah, yeah.
cheddars.
Mini cheddars.
Um, okay, I know we only have about 6 minutes. I have so many more questions,
It's
so
okay.
we will
We
have
can do
to
it again. We
redo.
can absolutely do it again.
But what are okay? What are your thoughts You ready for this
Go for
one?
it.
Because
Go
it's
for
a
it.
big thing here on Ozempic.
Oh gosh, that's a great question. Um, here's what I think, right? Again, I mentioned earlier, I started my studies in 2004, and or maybe it was 2003, doesn't matter. So I was reading about like the obesity statistics back
Mhm.
then, right? And my lecturers and things like that were able to show me like statistics from the 1970s and show this trend of the ever increasing rates of obesity from the 70s. And
Yeah.
now I teach this stuff obviously in 2026, and I'm still showing my students the same sort of graphs whereby obesity has continued to rise and to go up over time. Um, and I recall what one of my professors said, Harry Flint, and he was saying that he didn't think that this would ever be tackled until we could get like a pill. Well, we've got an injection to help people
Mhm.
fight obesity on here. Um, Public health policy has been an absolute failure, abject failure. So we've got
Mhm.
healthy eating advice that nobody follows. We've got exercise advice that nobody does. We've got cycle to work schemes, which nobody takes up. We've got healthy canteens, which no one's interested in. You've got farmers markets, which people can't afford. Like you've got all this. You've got organic food movements and all this sort of stuff. And the populations have just continued to get more out of shape over time. So um, I think the burden on our health systems, and you guys have got a different health system over there in the States, which is insurance based, but like it's
Yeah.
costing us in the UK hundreds of billions per year, right? Hundreds of billions, and it's publicly funded. So my tax is going towards managing diseases associated with obesity in the UK and building hospitals and stopping us from being able to treat and manage other conditions, which
Mhm.
which are all as a result of a preventable condition, which can be managed from diet and lifestyle. Now, we are coming up against like the food industry, which look, I'm a capitalist. I'm not against them being able to market their products to people. Like they should be allowed to. I'm also though at the same time like believe in free will and personal responsibility, and I'm all about that. So I sort of feel like you should take it upon yourself to manage your own health, like rather than having things like sugar taxis and things like that in yourself. Like, but it seems like it's all not working. So look, if you do the cost benefit analysis of Ozempic, um, there's absolutely side effects. There's absolutely a lack of understanding about what the long term outcomes are for this. There's a black market in these
Mhm.
things, um, but maybe it's the answer because I think what we're doing is not working. Right, that we have
Yeah.
to find out how we can educate people so that they can have the healthy lifestyles, have the healthy diets, to do the exercise and things like that. Because there's so much to be gained from a lifestyle like that, for sure. But if the Ozempic's the thing that gets them on that pathway to having more fulfilling and healthy lives, then I guess we're running out of options. Like we're literally
Yeah.
our health service, and pun intended, is buckling under the weight of of these problems. So yeah, I'm not against it. I mean, what do you think yourself?
I full disclosure, I'm on peptides. I
Hmm.
take a peptide and I know first of all, Ozempic was huge in the States before it made its way over there.
Yeah,
This is what we know. There are people in my life that have been on Ozempic that are now off their blood pressure medicine
yeah,
that are now seeing such improvements in their health and having to not be on very specific medicine anymore. I
Yeah.
don't think it is a quick fix.
No.
I do think it's a lifestyle change.
Hmm.
And I think as long as you go into it with the understanding that this is you're not just getting a magic pill. We're not just waving our wand and getting some magic pill that's going to automatically make you lose weight. You have to implement the changes that are required for this to be a long-term effect. Like, and I will say this, when I have been on Ozempic, or right now I guess I'm taking peptides, which I'm a firm believer in, and we can have that because I do have a question about that too. But if I eat something that is like greasy or whatever, like it's like my body's like no 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 no. And so I do think it helps in that regard. And I do think that there are so many benefits to it that people are seeing in terms of losing weight and getting
Yeah.
healthier,
Yeah.
which in turn obviously helps our healthcare system.
Yes.
And as you mentioned, we are insurance based in the States, not over there, obviously, it's the NHS. But what pisses me off is these insurance companies won't cover it. And it's like, why would you not cover something that is going to help somebody potentially not get diabetes, potentially decrease their cardiovascular health, like in the wrong sense, right? To
Yeah.
prevent, bad cardiovascular. Like, why would you not approve this? Why would you not say, okay, the cost that it takes right now is going to be a much larger cost benefit later,
Yeah.
because you're being a drain on our system later. You not being healthy today and is going to further drain our system later. Like, I don't get it. And I know, speaking to people over there, like the NHS does cover GLP-1s, which is what it is. It's a GLP-1. It's Ozempic by name. I think they call it, or Manjaro is now over there. But
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
why
There's different
wouldn't
versions of it,
you?
which work in slightly different ways, but yeah, it's essentially what it is.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't understand the insurance company's apprehensions to not cover it when it has more long-term benefits to not increase their costs later.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big discussion. I think in the UK, you have to have some very specific conditions. So it's a BMI of, I think it's 30 or 35 plus type 2 diabetes, and then they'll approve you to have it. So it's
Really?
something like that. And then I think the current guidance is that you can take it for 2 years, but they don't know after that what you do, essentially.
Yeah.
Well, over here, we're and the rules are different from Scotland to England as well. Um,
Okay.
because we've got our own health boards over here. But it's that what happens after the 2 years. So it's what is the long term, as you say, consequences of this. I don't think we really, I don't think we know. And that might be to come to the insurance company's defense, which I know is something that there's probably never been said in the States before. That might be the thing which is holding them back a little bit because they don't know what the long term outcomes are going to be. But do you know what? Again, I think we're probably. It sounds like we're totally aligned on it. I would love people to be as enthusiastic about health and exercise and things like that as me, but they're just not. And
Yeah.
like the benefit to wider society is, it seems like it's maybe worth it. But gosh, we could end up with some interesting issues in 30 years time of people using these things related to bone health, muscle wasting, but also the cognitive
Hmm.
function, because it certainly interacts with our reward centers in our brain. And I mean, if I can't get a buzz or I don't get a reward out of daily life from doing all my small tasks or achieving things, etc.
Yeah.
From there, then essentially I'm suffering from depression, right? And do people that
Right.
end up taking Ozempic long term end up in a position like that? I don't know. I genuinely
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's a leap to go down that route, but I'm not sure that we're 100% convinced that we know how these things work. 100% yet.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's with anything too. But I know we're at the hour. Well, or a little over.
It's
I have
okay.
so many
We do
more
one more.
questions. Okay, one more question.
Sure, go for it.
Okay. What are the actually no 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 no.
Have you got an easy one?
How is probably not easy. How is diet culture today impacting gut
How
health?
is diet culture today impacting gut health? Um, Gosh, I've said this many a time. If I was to choose a diet which was not good for gut health, it would be any sort of diet which eliminates dietary fiber. So things
Mhm.
like the carnivore diet, terrible for your gut health. Paleo diet, terrible for your gut health. Because you're eliminating whole food groups like whole grains and fiber, then you're slowing down the transit time and you're reducing your or you're increasing the contact for these carcinogenic compounds have with your gut. So if you remember back to the points I made earlier on about these carcinogenic compounds. I also said that the
Yeah.
fiber pushes this stuff down. So those types of diets are always terrible for you in that respect. But then there's a cost benefit from those things as well. And you've got your toolkit, and that's the thing that helps you lose weight. Maybe you can introduce the fiber later on to restore the health. Things like gluten free were never great because again, we know that there's a good relationship between portions of whole grains consumed. So I think it's for every 90
Mhm.
grams of whole grain bread that you consume beyond 3 portions, there's a reduction in things like cardiovascular disease, colorectal health, um, type 2 diabetes, and even just maintaining body weight as well. So things like gluten free were never great for things like that as well. And I'm glad that that kind of went out the window as well. Diet culture from the perspective of veganism and vegetarianism.
Yeah.
Vegetarianism, not so much. Veganism really went out of fashion. And I think when that was at a real peak around about 2019. And then COVID happened and everyone was like, oh, we've got bigger fish to fry. Or rather, they went and started frying the fish. And then there's this idea of luxury beliefs, right? I mean, when you've not got problems, you can have these luxury beliefs. As soon as you introduce problems, like that stuff goes out the window because we've got to deal with the actual
Mhm.
reality, right? And that seems to what happened with COVID. But I mean, anemia and iron deficiency conditions, osteoporosis, um, pernicious anemia, all associated with a lack of consuming animal-based products, vitamin D deficiencies. These have
Yeah.
all probably been negatively influenced by things like veganism, not necessarily as well for a net benefit either on the side of improving health conditions on the other side of things, because people only typically will follow a vegan diet for like say 9 months. And that's why when you look at numbers of things like the Vegan Society that put out, you'll ever see like 1% of the population is vegan, and it never changes year on year because people try it and then they give it up. They try it and they give it up. So that
Mhm.
that pool never really increases. So diet culture's never great. Yeah. So following fad diets anyway, and if we can get more people to follow sort of just that nice model that I described it in a previous episode of the
Mm.
balanced plate
Yeah.
of eating a
Balanced
nice
diet.
holistic approach. Do we just do that? That'd be fine, right? That'd be fine.
Yeah.
The Ozempic thing that the people are really worried about: muscle wastage, bone
Mhm.
wastage, micronutrient deficiency, And then, like, look, if you're not feeding your gut, then you will start to see issues around constipation and IBS and so on
Yeah.
associated with that as well, because you're putting nothing in there. So it's not giving anything
Right.
for your bugs to ferment. So you're going to see issues associated with that, and maybe immune system issues as well. Does that answer your question? Because I wasn't really sure
It
how to come at
does.
your
No, it
diet
does.
culture question.
It does. It's perfect. But I know we're at time. There's
Sure.
more questions we can re-record. Ask
Let's do
Dr.
it another day.
Chappell.
Yeah.
Apparently everyone wants to pick your brain. That's a compliment.
Yeah, I'll take that, right? I'll take that. I love doing these things and getting the knowledge out there, and hopefully people find it useful.
Yes, absolutely. And I appreciate you being on, as always. And you are welcome on at any time because, like I said, there's about 15 more questions that
Oh,
we didn't even get
amazing.
to.
Okay, well, again, we can keep going through this.
Dr. Chappelle, like, oh my goodness, everyone was pumped when I was like, when I put that thing on Instagram. It was like rapid fire.
Well, like I say,
So
you send them my way, and I'll
yeah,
happily answer more questions.
yes.
Incidentally, I should say, if you want to get in touch with me, people, you can find me on my Instagram, Dr.Andrew.Chappell, and you can find me on my website, the Natural Bodybuilding Coach, as well. So if you want to work with me, then we can do that as well. And I'll get you.
Do
I
you
work with
work
people.
with
Oh, sorry, go on.
people in the States? Do you
Oh
work with
yeah,
people
yeah.
in
I
the
work with
States?
people all over the world. I've worked with
Okay,
many people from America. I love you guys. You've all got such enthusiasm, and I think that's great. Very
perfect.
different from
Well,
British
thank
people.
you.
We
We're
tend to
very
be really
loud.
pure.
We're very loud. Okay.
So am I.
But but thank you again, and I can't wait to reconnect with you after this episode so we can get the rest of these questions answered because they are really good.
No problem. Excellent. Okay,
But
well, if we're wrapping it up there, then thank you very much for your time. Cheers, folks, and
yeah,
I look forward to doing this again.
perfect.